Welcome to Diplomacy Podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about the Middle East's shifting coalitions, Europe's evolving security architecture, and Turkey's place at the crossroads of both. I'll start in the Middle East with the uncomfortable triangle among Washington, Riyadh, and Jerusalem. Then move to Syria and the emerging push to reseat a central authority there, and finally jump to Europe, NATO, and the Russia Ukraine war, asking how all of this ricochets back to Ankara. My aim is simple, not to tell you what to think, but to stretch our diplomacy muscles and show how each piece constrains the others. Let's begin with a blunt observation. In the current American playbook, Israel is still a partner, but no longer the sole irreplaceable partner in the region. Saudi Arabia has moved from client with cash to anchor with leverage. Washington's priorities have shifted from open ended crisis management to deal making with measurable returns. Defense alignment, energy coordination, and de escalation with Iran that reduces risk to US assets and allies. You can see this in three practical episodes. First, the optics of bypass. In recent high stakes moments, the White House demonstrated it can secure outcomes in Gaza, like hostage releases, by triangulating through Doha and Cairo without giving Jerusalem a veto. Second, the microphone test. US leaders have spoken openly about direct lines to Tehran, not just intelligence deconfliction, but strategic conversations about boundaries and red lines, puncturing the myth that Washington must consult Jerusalem for every Iran move. And third, the leverage reminder. Washington has repeatedly signaled that supplying certain munitions is conditional, underscoring that Israeli tactics cannot impose unlimited costs on American interests. The cumulative effect is recalibration. Israel remains militarily superior but politically constrained, while Saudi Arabia becomes central to sustainable regional architecture, energy, investment, reconstruction, and Gulf to Mediterranean corridors. Inside Israel, politics and strategy are inseparable. Prime Minister Netanyahu's legal jeopardy, long standing corruption cases, means that power is not just a policy project, but also a shield, creating perverse incentives to prolong operations, postpone ceasefire phases, and drag out cabinet lifelines. Yet, strain is visible. Public fatigue and hostage anxiety are shifting Israeli society from maximum force to maximum accountability, with families demanding tangible progress. Reserve burnout and economic spillovers from prolonged mobilization are battering families, employers, and whole sectors. And institutional pushback is emerging, with former intelligence chiefs warning that maximalist goals in Gaza and open ended confrontation with Hezbollah are unsustainable, while any Iran adventure without US logistics is fantasy. Israel retains overwhelming tactical capability, but its strategic margin is narrowing under American signaling, European opinion, and internal contradictions. Turning to Gaza, the paradox is clear. Militarily, Israel can destroy infrastructure and degrade command chains, but politically, it cannot invent legitimacy from rubble. Occupation without governance breeds vacuum. Governance without legitimacy breeds insurgency. Three forces pull the crisis into political gravity. Humanitarian optics amplify reputational costs in a 24/7 media environment where allies cannot indefinitely defend civilian casualties. Ceasefire mechanics show fragility since multi phase deals require verifiable sequencing. Dodging phase two erodes mediator patience, shifting Washington from broker to arbiter. And regional preconditions matter. Riyadh and Abu Dhabi insist that normalization requires credible movement on Palestinian statehood, without which security ties remain covert rather than public treaties. Structurally, the military lever loses mechanical advantage unless tied to a political gearbox, one increasingly engineered in Riyadh, Doha, and Washington, not Jerusalem. On Iran, the hard truth is that rhetoric cannot deter hardened buried facilities. What matters is inventory, long range strike, stealth delivery, bunker penetrating munitions, and replenishment, which requires US logistics. Israel has formidable air power, but even its planners concede the difference between a punitive sortie and a campaign neutralizing nuclear latency. This is why the American channel to Tehran matters. Washington is trading limited sanctions relief and regional de escalation for verifiable nuclear steps while seeking to cap proxy activity in Iraq and Syria. The outcome is uncertain, but the intent is to box risk, not chase silver bullets. For Israel, deterrence is recalibrating toward fewer public red lines, more quiet coordination, and a mix of targeted interdictions and cyber operations. For the Gulf, hedging means sustaining US ties, engaging Tehran pragmatically, and keeping expectations realistic. Now to Syria, where a new consensus managed reintegration is emerging. Security comes first as multiple armed groups and external patrons make the country a permanent instability corridor, and frozen conflict risks ISIS revival. Reconstruction math dictates that only the Gulf can bankroll rebuilding, and funds require central authority, however distasteful. Burden sharing reflects Washington's desire for fewer troops and surprises, with Ankara and Riyadh expected to guarantee boundaries. No cross border adventures, no Iranian power corridors destabilizing Jordan and Israel. Here, the Syrian democratic forces complicate assumptions. Globally, leader diplomacy is back. Presidents talk directly, envoys roam with opaque mandates, and personal rapport often outpaces institutions. The method yields surprises, US North Korea meetings, sudden hostage deals, but carries fragility. Without institutional backstops, deals evaporate when leaders fall or domestic misreadings occur. That is why serious states embed charisma in institutions. Sherpa groups, annexes, verification, budgets. Turkey, adept at leader level channels, must now institutionalize wins. Turn handshakes into America sequences toward bounded bargains. Saudi Arabia sequences modernization with ambition. Israel must sequence tactics under political constraint, and Turkey, uniquely positioned, can sequence regional security with European re-anchoring. This is not about liking or disliking leaders, but about reading the board early enough to choose your own trade-offs instead of having them chosen for you. I appreciate your comments and questions via email or in the comments section. I hope we have stretched our diplomacy thinking a little bit. Feel free to subscribe and see you next time.